Have you ever noticed how a single moment can ripple through a lifetime, its true color only revealed by the slow, patient tides of time? We are so quick to name our experiences, to label them as triumphs or tragedies, but perhaps the wisest path is simply to walk, to observe and to trust the journey without needing to define its every turn. This is the story of a man who understood this better than anyone, a man named Elias, who lived in a small village nestled in a valley of green, cradled by ancient unmoving mountains. In the village of Stonehaven, where life was measured by the changing seasons and the harvest's yield, Elias was known for two things: his quiet, unwavering calm, and his magnificent white horse, Zephyr. The horse was a creature of myth, with a coat like fresh fallen snow, and eyes that held the deep wisdom of the wild. He moved not like a tamed animal, but like a willing partner, a friend. So remarkable was Zephyr that his fame reached the ears of Lord Valerius, the wealthy nobleman whose lands stretched as far as the eye could see. The lord came to Elias's humble cottage, his fine clothes a stark contrast to the simple earthen home. He offered a chest of gold, enough to buy every field in the valley, for the horse. The villagers held their breath, imagining the riches. But Elias simply stroked Zephyr's neck and shook his head gently. "Thank you for the generous offer, my lord," he said, his voice as soft as moss. "But this horse is not a possession. He is family. How can a man sell his family?" Lord Valerius left in a cloud of dust and indignation, and the villagers whispered that Elias was a fool to turn down such a fortune for a mere animal. Then, one morning, the unthinkable happened. The paddock gate, splintered and broken, swung open on a single hinge. The stall was empty. Zephyr was gone. A wave of murmurs washed through Stonehaven. "A tragedy," cried some. "What terrible luck!" Others were less kind. "See, he should have sold him," they scoffed. "Now he has nothing. He held on too tight and lost it all." They came to Elias's cottage expecting to find him weeping, but he was calmly mending the broken gate. He looked at their long faces and offered a small, serene smile. "The gate is broken and the horse is gone," he stated simply. "That is the fact. Whether it is good or bad fortune is a story we tell ourselves later. For now, the gate needs mending." The villagers walked away, shaking their heads at his strange detachment. Weeks turned into a month. The snows of winter began to melt, and the first green shoots of spring pushed through the soil. One evening, as the sun bled orange and purple across the sky, a low rumble echoed from the hills. It grew louder, a sound like distant thunder, until the very ground began to tremble. The villagers ran from their homes, their eyes wide with fear and wonder. And then they saw it. At the head of a dozen wild, powerful horses, their manes flying like banners in the wind, was Zephyr. He trotted proudly, not as a captive, but as a king returning to his kingdom, bringing his court with him. He led the entire herd straight into Elias's mended paddock. The village erupted. "A miracle!" they shouted. "Elias, you are the luckiest man alive. What a blessing! You refused a chest of gold and the heavens have given you a fortune in horses." They clapped him on the back, their previous scorn forgotten, replaced by awe and envy. Elias watched the magnificent animals, his gaze calm and steady. "Zephyr has returned, and he has brought friends," he said, his voice even. "That is what has happened. The story of what it means we have not yet read. Elias's only son Leo was a young man full of fire and ambition. He saw the wild horses not just as a blessing, but as a challenge. He was determined to tame the strongest of the newcomers, a fiery black stallion. Elias cautioned him, "Patience, my son. A wild spirit cannot be broken. It must be understood." But Leo was young and eager to prove his worth. He cornered the stallion, leaped onto its back, and for a glorious moment he rode the whirlwind. But the horse's untamed power was too much. With a violent buck, it threw Leo to the ground. A sickening crack echoed through the paddock. The villagers rushed to help, their faces etched with pity. Leo's leg was badly broken, twisted at an unnatural angle. "Oh, the poor man," they whispered, just out of Elias's earshot. "Such a terrible turn. First this incredible fortune, and now this tragedy. These wild horses are a curse. Elias, however, showed no despair. He knelt by his son, his hands gentle and sure as he assessed the injury. He and the village healer set the bone and wrapped it in splints. He nursed his son with quiet devotion. When the villagers offered their sympathies for his terrible misfortune, he simply nodded. "My son has fallen, and his leg is broken," he said. "We will care for him until he is strong again. That is our task now. The rest is just a story." The seasons turned again. Leo's leg healed slowly, and he learned the difficult lesson of patience, finding a new, quieter strength in his forced stillness. Then, one day, the drums of war began to beat in the distance. Lord Valerius's soldiers marched into Stonehaven, their armor glinting ominously in the sun. A decree was read in the village square. A great war had begun in the north, and every able-bodied young man was to be conscripted into the army. A shadow of grief fell over the village. Mothers wept as they embraced their sons, knowing they might never see them again. The soldiers went from house to house, their lists in hand. They arrived at Elias's small cottage and saw Leo sitting outside, his leg still bound in a heavy splint, a sturdy crutch resting beside him. The captain looked at him, then at his list, and shook his head. "This one's no use to us," he grunted, and moved on. Leo was the only young man in Stonehaven who was spared. As the other sons marched away, their futures uncertain, the villagers looked at Elias with a new understanding. The woman who had called the horses a curse now approached him, her eyes filled with tears of awe. "Your son," she stammered. "His broken leg. It saved him. What we all called a tragedy was the greatest blessing of all. How could you have known?" Elias gathered the small group of remaining villagers under the shade of an old oak tree. He looked into their searching, questioning faces and finally shared the philosophy he had lived by for so long. "You see," he began, his voice a gentle current in the quiet air, "life is like a great river. We stand on the bank and see a single drop pass by, and we call it good or we call it bad. But we cannot see the entire river. We do not know if that drop will flow onto water a thirsty field or if it will join a flood that washes away a home. We see only a fragment, a single, incomplete moment. To judge it is to fool ourselves." He gestured to the world around them. "The horse ran away. That was not bad. It was just a fact. The horse returned with a herd. That was not good. It was just what happened. My son broke his leg. It was not a tragedy. It was an event that demanded our care and patience. The war came and he was spared. That is not a blessing. It is simply the next turn in the river's path. The moment your son broke his leg, it was painful. The moment he was spared, it was a relief. But the event itself was neither good nor bad, it simply was." He looked at each of them, his gaze kind and profound. "Abandon this heavy burden of judgment," he advised. "Stop labeling everything that happens to you. When you do, you chain your happiness to circumstances you cannot control. Instead, focus on what you can control. Focus on your actions in this very moment. When the gate was broken, my task was to mend it. When my son was hurt, my task was to heal him. Do not worry about fortune or misfortune. Do not live according to the praise or pity of others. Simply be present. Tend to the task at hand with a clear mind and a full heart. Accept what comes, without the need to name it, and you will find a peace that no turn of fate can ever take away." The villagers left that day not with answers, but with a deeper question. They began to see the world not as a series of verdicts to be handed down, but as a tapestry to be witnessed. And Elias continued his life, a quiet man in a quiet valley, living a profound truth, that the greatest freedom is not to control your destiny, but to release the need to judge it.